Commission regular meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. and begin with roll call.
Haji Rita. Here. Bill Bonham.
Here.
Greg Smith.
Here.
Leslie Boudwin.
Here.
Deborah Fortner.
Here.
Bill Latimer. Marjorie Morgan.
Here.
Paul Slater. We have a quorum.
All right, if you'd all join me please in invocation. Gracious God, what a wonderful day you've given us right here in Dickinson, Texas, and we appreciate the opportunity to gather in this manner to help conduct the business of our city and be a part of the development and the future of this wonderful community. Pray that you guide our decisions here so that they affect all of our community in a positive manner. Pray that you keep your hand on all the men and women of our American military who work so hard and sacrifice so much to ensure that we have the right and the privilege to gather in this manner. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And Mr. Bond, would you lead us in both pledges, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to you, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
God bless Texas. All right, next item on our agenda, consideration of possible action concerning approval of minutes of February, that's not correct, what's the date, Alan?
That's correct.
February 19, 2019 regular meeting. You've all had an opportunity to review those minutes. Are there any changes or corrections?
I move your approval. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Bonham, a second by Mr. Smith for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item 3, discussion and direction concerning the development of hotel and motel regulations. Mr. Meadows, would you give us the latest?
Yes, Chairman and Commission members, of course, before you. We discussed this at the last meeting. What I included in y'all's packet was the regulations that were given to y'all at the last, in the February meeting. No changes have been added to what was given before. I believe Alan sent out after that meeting to all the members what the developer that was, or the architect that was doing the last hotel after direction from Mr. Reeder and the Commission to send that out to y'all to kind of look at that and look at what was previously kind of had been brought up by that particular individual to see if there's any additional regulations that you wanted to kind of put in there, or just in general have that discussion at this meeting. And once we kind of have, from a staff level, it fully finalized, we'll formally post it and bring it back to y'all for your recommendation to council. And so that's what we have before you. So entertain any discussion on, what, if this is good, if you want to add anything, however you guys want to handle that. So.
This is a relatively concise version of what we actually started with. I think we've hit the high point, or this at least hits the high points of everything that was included in all those multiple pages. Questions from anyone?
I guess my concern is the fact that, and maybe it doesn't apply to this, but as a committee, things that come across us, that has to do with the exterior of the building and facility. And I see nothing in here concerning that. Is that because that's covered under the building code?
So as staff was putting together the regulations, because certain types of discussions have happened in front of council prior, we did not suggest putting in any exterior type material regulations or putting that forth. But of course, if P&Z would like to offer additional than what's already required, just like in the discussion we had last week, let's say with the Starbucks, although what they were proposing is allowed, the group of individuals here said we would like to see a little bit more elevated materials.
No, that's not, let me interrupt you.
Go ahead.
That's not exactly what we said.
Well,
What we said was that we need to see that prior to breaking ground.
understood. But you did suggest that they wanted to see maybe brick or some other type of material on the outside, especially facing 517.
Right.
So if this body wants to recommend adding some language as far as some additional exterior elements that wouldn't be covered under normal, then that would obviously apply to hotels and motels that are built within the city. Obviously, if you want to recommend it, and we'll see what council does, but that's the reason they weren't included, was because of prior discussions with council and just how those discussions have gone in the past. So obviously you have a council member here, not representing, I'm sure, as council, but he can probably talk to you more about that. And I know Bruce is in the building as well.
I mean, my concern is, especially if these hotel and motel butts up to a subdivision, my concern is adequate fencing. And also location of the trash bin or dumpster or whatever it's called.
Yeah. And the dumpster, so to speak to the fencing is covered in our regulations elsewhere. So that's why none of that was put in here. The dumpster location as well, as far as the materials and things. I think in the February meeting, one of the things we included on the list was dumpster enclosures, as far as looking at that and changing how that is across the board. So that's something that eventually we'll have to look at. And that goes along with fencing, too. We had that discussion. So, but if there's specific things that y'all want to see as far as what that looks like for hotel and motels, then this would be the time to address it. And then we go back later on and look at adjusting it and making it across the board or whatnot. So,
along with the butting up against a subdivision, what about the lighting requirements? Is that elsewhere?
And again, lighting is also elsewhere. I mean, parking. Those are all things that the reason they were not included was for the simple fact that those are in other locations. But again, if we want to go above and beyond that, then this would be the time to do that for these types of developments.
I think lighting is really important in that situation, especially as it comes against any kind of subdivision like we're talking here.
We're confident, Zach, that many of these things we're discussing are covered, or many of the codes that we have relative to the development of the property.
Yes.
But we're gun shy.
I understand.
Okay? We're gun shy. And when we start to go over these things and go through them and spend time looking at them and make our suggestions and take into account all the meetings we've had prior to this about the hotel motel, the fact that we've already approved a motel behind Kroger that doesn't apply to any one of these, I get a little bit concerned about whether or not it's really a valuable use of our time. You've given us a very concise, as the chairman said, a list of the things to be considered. And the definition, I think, is important.
Sure.
Hotel, motel, or extended living. And I think that's all we can do, because whatever happens in the development property, the plans and the landscape and all the others, it just goes on.
Yeah. Well, I think, obviously so to kind of, speak to the specifics of the design standards, when we, kind of what we mentioned here was that we would allow hotels by right, but most of the other indications in interstate commercial, and then in general commercial, everything would be by specific use permit. And I think under that specific use permit instance, also you would have, this body and the council would have an opportunity to add various conditions, just like you did on the Dollar General, is it out there? And you were able to add certain elements in there to protect the homeowners and the property owners that it was adjacent to. And so those are always afforded to you during that process. We don't want to take that away from you in adopting these. We just wanted to have a little bit more on top of that. That was a base, that they had to start at before they even reached this point of going through that. But the only one that wouldn't affect, obviously, as proposed here, would be hotels in the interstate commercial zoning district, which is only currently located on I-45. So I'll leave that where, that discussion where it is. But yeah, most of the things that y'all have mentioned, and I understand being gun shy, I understand that a lot of the developments that have come to you more recently, there's been a lot of discussion, and that's great. I mean, this is what this board is for, to catch things like that and have that discussion. You know, but there are certain things that staff feels are appropriate and we need to start with and kind of build upon. And so this is kind of, again, where we started at. And, you know, if you want to add those additional elements, we can definitely do that. And we can even double up. I mean, there's nothing that says it can't be in this section and in the other section. But, you know, this is just where we started. So that becomes your opinion.
Well, as this is written, the minimum design standards between interstate commercial and general commercial are right on. That is the way that needs to read. The process of obtaining specific use permit does give us the ability and the authority to require other specific things regarding everything from the parking lot to the building to everything else.
Yeah.
So that must be retained as it is. Additional standards and regulations, that reads pretty much like every other model we've looked at from other communities, other cities. Nothing wrong with that. I don't find any problem with that. We have to rely on the other areas of our codes and ordinances to address things like lighting, landscape buffering, etc. Otherwise, there's no need to have those things.
Well, and I know it does come down to an enforcement issue too, and it's a reliance, unfortunately, sometimes from this board and also council, it's a reliance on the staff that's put in place is doing their job. And, you know, I know we can always do a little bit better. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but, you know, some of those things do just come down to that. It's just an enforcement and making sure that they're maintaining their property in the standards that we in the city of Dickinson expect.
Zach, let me ask you, is it helpful for someone, a citizen coming in to want to do this, to have everything in one spot?
Yeah, so, and this is something, this is kind of going down a slightly different path, but this is something that I've been working on for a while, is a lot of cities have kind of what's called a unified development code, so that it's, you know, a lot of times our landscaping ordinance is in separate from the zoning, and so they have to go over here to zoning and then look what's applicable to landscaping. Look, so a lot of times, yes, it makes a lot more sense. Now there are some legal hurdles and things with doing something like that, but it's something that I've started working on just to kind of consolidate all the information in one place. Because if they can't find it, they're going to pick up the phone and they're going to ask me, and they're going to ask me and ask me and ask me. And so if I can limit that as much as possible, that helps my, you know, day-to-day process of things and just administrating my department. So,
and their frustration. So
yeah, exactly, and yeah, alleviates that. And of course, then they'll, you know, boast that, you know, we're a better city to work with, and, you know, we're able, you know, they're development friendly and things like that. I mean, all that plays into that. So yeah, I mean, that is something that we do want to kind of have a consolidated place. But I think, and me and Alan, like I said, have kind of started working on some of those things. Once we get the big kind of regulations and clean up the regulations that are in place, because it's a lot harder to, like, say, we need to consolidate it all, but if there's things that need to be changed, let's change it first and then make the consolidation happen. And so a lot of that will help by going through these things and building these things in place first before we do that.
You kind of addressed where I was, next place I was headed, and that is in this minimum design standard. Would it be helpful, advantageous, realistic, appropriate, whichever term fits, within that section to reference those various codes and ordinances, as if for no other reason than as a reminder when we're considering these things, that those things must be considered and adhered to by whichever means is appropriate for the particular item. Oftentimes our resources are limited for enforcement.
Yeah.
That's a shame, but that's the reality. That's the way it is. So I don't know how we address that anymore.
Yeah,
or any more effectively, at least.
We have done it in other ordinances where we've just, you know, referenced other sections, and so if that's something that you would like to do, I can definitely start to put that together, and when it comes forward to y'all next time, have that language in there, just referencing some of those sections that I know are applicable, parking, lighting, dumpsters, all fencing, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's definitely doable. And then when it comes time to that consolidation, then we'll know, hey, we got to put those in there, So
when that entity comes in, that person, that individual, or whatever comes in to start the process, they're going to want to see this, and they're told right up front then that you still got to meet every other code and every other ordinances. And people come in and say, well, I didn't know that all the time. So we want to make sure they do by doing so.
No problem. I can definitely do that, Chairman.
One of the things I am concerned about is under definitions for motel, hotel, and residence hotel.
Okay.
A building is fine, but I'm concerned about a group of buildings.
Okay.
And let me tell you where I'm coming from. We had the motel on 517.
The economy.
There was several buildings. So shouldn't we limit the number of units to the dimension of the property?
You can definitely do that. This is, from a definition standpoint, this was kind of an industry and standard kind of definition, as well as the majority of cities that I found definitions, the ones that I felt comfortable in how they defined it, this was kind of what they stuck with. But if you're like that, I would say not necessarily in the definition part, but that would be another standard, to say, this amount of buildings per this amount of gross area or, acreage or whatnot.
And maybe we could add that verbiage under additional standards and regulations, just like we've identified the size of the lobby based upon the number of rooms.
Okay. I can see if I can find some, or
I would appreciate that.
That's going to be kind of a difficult thing to be specific about.
It is tough,
but I mean, does it concern you that we could have, a group of small buildings on a property?
Individual hotels?
Yes.
Well,
We have a motor court.
we do have,
Remember motor court?
The old motor court.
we do have, in our language, like on residence, obviously, we have, per, a single family lot per 6,000 square feet, only one home. If it's in general commercial and interstate commercial, I believe that they have similar language like that, so some of that may already be built in. I'll need to double check that to make sure, but if it's something that you're interested in seeing possible language for, then let me find it, and let's, when I bring it back to you all next month for final adoption, we'll see if you like that language. We can always remove it if not.
I understand exactly what you're saying. However, I think that perhaps any piece of property within the city limits that something like this might be built on, not too big anyway. And there are setback lines and building lines and all of that stuff, and the amount of parking that is required for any facility, I don't think it's even going to be an issue, because you're not going to have individual buildings with 2 rooms in them, so to speak, I wouldn't think. So I'm not sure that's
my only concern was the fact that, what I saw on Highway 517 before it was torn down.
When we do have,
we won't have that again.
when we do have lot coverage too, so they're not going to be able to just build the whole thing up with buildings. There's gonna be other factors that play into how many buildings you could even stick on a property just based on lot coverage requirements that fall under each of the zoning requirements. So, but I'll definitely look and see if we can build something like that, and if we like it or don't like it.
Like you said, to see what other cities are doing.
For sure.
How about, I don't remember seeing this specifically in some of the other things that we looked at, but is it typical to specify a minimum number of rooms for it to be a hotel or a motel?
So that there are some cities, Texas City, I know for sure does that, where they limit the amount of room, or they say a minimum room total count that's required across the board. So even regardless of what it's defined as, you have to have this many rooms. It's hit or miss. Some cities do it, some don't. Texas City is probably the closest that does to us.
Well, I would have concern again about the size of available property to do this. it would seem logical to me that if I'm going to build a hotel, I want to put as many rooms on the available space as I can.
Sure.
So I mean, that's just the thought I had. Is it relevant? Is it worth pursuing? What's your thought?
I think you hit it when you said that people will want to put as many as they can for the property that's available. So, you know, I think it's kind of a non-issue, but maybe I'm wrong.
Doesn't parking start having an impact on that?
Parking would, yeah, I mean, all the other factors will play into it. I mean, you know, the higher the room size, the more parking you have to accommodate, and more, you know, at that, more landscaping, you know, more, I mean, everything starts compounding on each other, so.
But if you're saying, hey, this piece of property cannot sustain that's a different issue, isn't it? So.
Well, it also, so because it's a zoning regulation, they're always going to have the ability to say, I can't meet, let's say, just arbitrary number, 60 rooms because of the size of the property. So then they go get a variance, and if the BOA says, because of the size of your property, which is a legal hardship, that the size of the property, I can't meet that many rooms, then they could grant that. That's always afforded to them, but if you build that in, then that would be their process to still do it on the property.
But Texas.
Are we limiting the number of floors?
No.
But Texas City did that because they don't want a bunch of little things.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the exact same reason that when the previous hotel came in, it's the exact same reason that some of y'all had concern with a 40-room hotel.
Definitely.
And so, yeah, that's why they put that language in there.
One of the freeways is 6 stories.
Well, so the council, we ended up going with a certain number of feet, right? So we did limit the height of the building, but not necessarily the number of stories, because we looked at the capabilities of the fire department to extinguish a fire. So we didn't, you know, because you'd have a 30-foot single-story building or bigger 3-story building. So we do limit the height.
Yeah.
But Bubba, I'm getting what you said now, because if you know, you end up with just a few rooms and you have something that you don't really want here in Dickinson, you know, I'm getting what you're saying.
Yeah, interstate commercial, we allowed, just from a height standpoint, so we did keep the stories in interstate commercial, because that discussion of stories came after interstate commercial was adopted. But we allow 6 stories, total of 70 feet in height, only on I-45. And then the other ones, like GC, is 45 feet in height. So from finished grade or base flood elevation, whichever is higher. So
Well, that solves the issue, regardless of how many stories it is. What's really, really important is that the fire department can service it.
yeah.
If need be.
But back to your deal, is there a minimum number of rooms that we would want to indicate that it is indeed a hotel, motel, whatever, and not just...
Well, when I initially thought about that, my answer would have been yes, absolutely.
Yes.
But I'm not so certain about that at this point.
So what if somebody comes in and want to build a 5-room hotel?
That's not a motel.
Is 30 a motel?
Yeah. I guess.
I mean, I'm just asking.
I mean,
That's what I said. That doesn't.
so what prevents somebody from building a 5-room motel?
Well, the only thing that would prevent them would be coming before this body and city council and
Special use permit?
being disapproved. Then you get into that problem of, well, it meets all the regulations.
Yeah,
You can't-
that's it.
You can't disallow it.
Might as well get it now.
Well, with an SUP, you always can.
True.
There's nothing that says it meets the ordinance and you have to approve.
Yeah, but I don't want to...
No, I understand what you're saying.
Everybody from the get-go.
No, I completely understand what you're saying, but that's why the SUP exists, because you're saying that there are certain characteristics of these properties and these types of developments that would warrant us to consider, does this make sense at this piece of property? Does this make sense here? Does this make sense here? Does a 5-room hotel make sense? You know?
Well, there's always danger in being naive, but you would have to believe that a hotel, motel, in this case hotel, on the interstate, this would never be an issue.
No, I agree with you. But we're not talking about that one. We're talking about...
But
you know what we're talking about.
because of the specific use permit, then you do have control.
We thought we had control about a lot of other things, didn't we? That we found out we didn't.
Unfortunately, we were
But if our goal
singled out.
is to be clear to people, so that when they come in, they feel positive about Dickinson, then it seems like the better that we delineate that in the beginning instead of an SUP. I mean, SUP, yes, is great, but I think it's very important that people come into our city that want to invest, have cleared, or clear, you know, so.
Like you said, there's no problem whatsoever in putting a minimum number in there, which would basically, exactly as you're saying, it shuts the conversation down if you don't know you don't have something special. But if you have something special and it's less than that, then you can apply for a variance.
Right.
But I would agree, it would shut down a lot of long-term people spending money in a wasteful manner
Yeah.
when they go, well, we're just not meeting the expectation.
And they feel bad, they walk away, and I don't want to do that.
So how about let's do this, since you have other things to research here, check around to see what those minimum numbers are, or do you already know?
The only one I know offhand is Texas City, and I think it was 60, if I can recall. But I don't know of any other ones offhand.
Is that hotel and motel? Either
Yeah,
way?
they just put a across the
Blanket
board. Yeah.
Yeah, I had hotels. That's true. I don't recall the city having that in their standards.
I don't believe so, but like I said, I know the closest one that has a minimum room total is Texas City.
What number would you have in your mind?
I was sitting here wondering about, how many rooms is the Days Inn?
It's 40.
It is 40.
Yeah.
The one that came before us a while back, that was 40 also, was it
Yeah.
not?
And the one behind Kroger is 40.
Okay. My only hesitation of going with 40 is 60 is a wonderful number. I really like that number. But it goes back to when we started talking about the map of the city.
Yeah.
Where is there any place in the city people would have enough room to put a 60-unit hotel?
Right.
Yeah, you have to.
So do we go out of our way to shut down any opportunity in advance?
No.
I don't think that's a smart way to do it
No.
either. Let them go up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
Then they still got to start
It
doing parking
changes,
arrangements.
what it does is it changes the type of building you're going to get. So, I mean, yeah, they're going to go up, and at that point, they're probably not going to do it outside. They're going to go inside. You know, so you're getting to the heart of what you're.
So 40 is too little, 60 is too much.
I'll split the difference with you.
There you go.
Well, what, just off the top of your head, what was your number?
Well, I didn't. If the ones that we have pre-approved are 40, and we want to go forward from there, then it needs to be a little bit more than 40, I think. If so,
I would go in between. I'd say 50.
Listen, if you're sitting over here looking awfully studious, haven't said it.
I got something to say.
He's warmed up.
I mean, 50 is the.
that's cool. Do I need a motion or just?
No, hang on, I want to hear what Mr. Dees has to say anyway, so this is as good as time as any.
Well, you know, it's obvious that you guys have done a lot of research on, you know, surrounding cities, and that I personally am against any motel that opens to the outside. That's me, not council. It's very painful that once someone has come in and bought a lot, looking at the existing requirements, thinking that they're going to be able to put a hotel or motel on it, and then they have to go for an SUP. It's very difficult by the time it gets to council to turn that down if they've already bought the property and they've complied with
They have a big
everything.
investment by that time.
Right, well, and they've complied with everything that we have in writing.
Right.
That's why a lot of them get approved. So anything that you can do ahead of time spell it out before they actually make a purchase, would help. One other thing I had too was,
Indoor, outdoor.
yes, as far as I'm concerned, I'm okay with 100, and all indoor, not opening to the outside. And they can go up. For the outdoor, is there anything about ADA compliant? If they have an outdoor two-story, they're going to have an elevator?
So they would have to have, there's certain state regulations when it comes to hotels. When it comes to ADA compliance, they have to offer the same stuff on the bottom floor as they do up top, so they have to have some way to get up there. So I don't know about, I would imagine it would be an elevator.
Well, yeah, I mean,
otherwise,
the ADA is just for guests, is for staff as well.
Yes, but there are requirements elsewhere in our
So
ADA
that doesn't
requirements.
need to be in here.
Doesn't have to be, but again, it's one of those things, if you want to consolidate everything in one place or show it where it is, that they have to
But
comply.
talking about ADA specifically, the state hotel, motel requirements, et cetera, do specifically address that. Now, if we want to put that in here, just like we said a while ago.
I don't think it's necessary.
Does the one on the freeway have a elevator? No.
No,
I don't think so.
Does not.
they don't.
I suspect that in Texas City that something went on to make it very unattractive to build a motel that opens to the outside, whether it's 100 rooms or, whatever. But, and I don't know if it's legal to just outright say we don't have any motels.
They don't allow them to live on premises.
They don't allow them to live on premises.
They do back to reinforce.
Texas City does not allow a tenant or the owner to live on premises.
How the heck am I gonna?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have to have
Keith, on that though, it's like, how do you enforce that?
hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of my comment as far as, it's more germane to the operation, not necessarily the design. But one of the things that we had discussed previously was how do we put something in there to keep that situation from occurring?
Yeah.
Which says we can't rent this room for more than twice in a 24-hour period,
Yeah.
for example.
Well, and that wasn't something that I included, but we did talk in the on item C under the additional standards that accommodations can be built for management to live on property. However, no more than one living space can be designated for that purpose. So
And that's for management.
That's for
as far as
management.
tenants, renters, or whatever you want to call them.
yeah. And that was something that got brought up because I know that was a condition that y'all placed on the previous hotel.
Right.
That was something that got brought up at council, and I believe the city attorney even said that we can't really enforce it. It's nothing. You can put the language in there, but it's all virtually impossible to enforce. So,
How's it impossible to enforce if you send somebody out there to enforce it?
yeah, you're gonna be able to.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Realize the problem.
Well,
But I mean, you have to
Who
start,
are you
you have
sending?
to start with the regulation though, right? You have to put something in there so that you can enforce it. It's a matter of choice whether you're gonna.
Well, the reason for wanting to do that is obvious, but if someone is in that room and their checkout time is noon, that room is rented for that day. And if someone comes in and checks in at 2 o'clock, you've rented that room twice in one day.
In
In
24 hours.
24 hours. Have you not?
Not more than 20.
Not more than
Not
20.
more than twice in 24 hours.
I think that's a reasonable requirement myself.
that's fine.
You have comments on that?
No hourly rates.
And yes, yeah, no hourly rate.
Yeah, it just keeps that kind of turnover from happening
Right.
and setting a precedent that, okay, we can get a room for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Now, enforcement of that, regardless of whether we have the resources to actually do that or not, will be irrelevant from this discussion. Right, that's-
Sure. Agreed.
We passed an ordinance not to use your cell phone in a school zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good ordinance.
It's an ordinance.
How do you enforce it? Zach, if I may,
Please, Sean.
Dietz's comment, what are the laws relative to making a statement of no exterior facing motels? Is there an actual law that prohibits us from making a statement like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Those entities who routinely, their facilities are really routinely that type of business model, is it legal for us to say, no, you can't build what your business does here?
If it's in our ordinance and it's not illegal.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, like, there's plenty of things that we don't, like, uses that we don't have in our ordinance. I mean, it happens all the time. So if I don't include it in the language, then it's not allowed.
For all intents and purposes, everything's legal until somebody takes a lawsuit against it.
Of course.
That's true.
I mean, I don't think there's nothing out there that I have seen that says you can't prohibit that. So.
Okay, well.
It's just something that I know is a hot button issue for Dickinson, has with this board. It's come up at council. So if that's something that y'all want to prohibit, I was just, I left it obviously in there to only require that, it needed to have the SUP so that you could make that decision if it was appropriate or not. But otherwise, they're not allowed unless it is by SUP. But again, to Councilman Dietz's point is, if they've bought the property and they've gone through the process, it's really hard to stand up in front of somebody and say no. and still be pro-development.
The only place that I could see that would be beneficial possibly is if it faced the bio. If the room's opened up facing the bio and their business plan called for a bio view. But otherwise, rooms opening up, looking at the back of the shopping center on Spruce is
not much of a view, is it?
No.
So,
Well,
what your suggestion is then too, is that they must go through the lobby to go to the rooms, is what I'm hearing you say.
Be all indoor access.
Yeah, it'd be a hallway down the middle of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So they would have to.
And if you look at, I think there's the ones that are already built and being built in Texas City, for instance, all around Cantor Mall, and then over on the other side of the freeway, they're all hotels.
So.
And League Cities is pretty much the same way. I don't know of any that are being built over there that open through the exterior. But like I said, if you go to Galveston, obviously you want Gulf view, and maybe you want bio view if somebody wants to build on the bio, but other than that.
Zach, how does that, if we make that decision to do that, how does that impact the present deal that's in the works?
It doesn't. I mean, they're allowed to, they're permitted or approved, through their SUPs. Some, the one behind Kroger is already permitted. The other one didn't get approved. The one off of Spruce at this point. So
that was a drainage issue.
Yeah. So that the only one that is in the works is that one behind Kroger's, and anything that was passed by council at this point, it would not affect them. So it would just be anything coming forward.
Then we could do it.
Yeah.
Without putting somebody in jeopardy.
Yeah. I have nothing in my office for anything new. So I would tell you all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't have a problem with the 100 room, and I don't have a problem going up. But if it's adjacent to a neighborhood, I think there's privacy for that neighborhood needs to be taken into consideration, whereby someone cannot look from their room window into someone's backyard.
So
I would just like that to, people to consider that our neighborhood should have some privacy.
So you're.
What's that height requirement on in general commercial?
45.
45?
45. I'm looking up something on
Pretty
that.
much covered right there.
I think it's 45 in general commercial. In interstate commercial, we go to 70. And interstate commercial is that narrow band that still will have some of the properties will back up to residences. And a 70-foot building, you got
And I have all
Rampant on Impossible.
real concern for those families who live along those areas, but I always have to come back to the fact, and I know I'm going to take flack for saying this, but I guess that's why I'm here, to take flack. If you live along or if you back up to a commercial piece of property along a major thoroughfare,
Guess what?
you need to realize that at some point, there's going to be something built there that you may or may not agree with. I'm sorry, that's just the reality of the situation.
You're not the only one that's taking flack for that.
But, I know.
Let's go back.
I guess, yeah.
Now, that doesn't minimize
So-
my
so-
concern
so-
for those
so-
folks in any way.
So yes, but a lot of those homeowners was bought when certain highways were just a 2-lane highway,
Indeed, they were. Ain't progress a wonderful thing?
sometimes.
So, let's get back.
Okay, then
Back to
we
the-
need to come to a consensus among us
Yeah.
about this, about two items. The number of rooms and opening to the front.
If we can make that determination, I'd rather everybody has to go through the interior. It's, you know.
I have,
yeah.
I agree. Going through the interior.
I have no preference.
I agree. I agree.
Interior.
Interior? Change it to interior, Zach.
Okay,
Motels prohibited in general commercial also.
yep.
So I think we just change it to limited, period.
Well,
Yes, if you're
you
going
were
to change
saying,
it, it's a blanket change. However, if that unit comes in that wants to face the front along the bio,
but that's a
they can still
variance.
do that by specific use.
But then, so if we prohibited motels, they couldn't. But if you have something fronting the bayou, it wouldn't be the front door, right? It'd be the back patio.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want to open up my windows and have all my other guests walk in front of my room.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it would be more like
it
the
would be a
porch at the
balcony
back,
or a
right,
balcony.
balcony.
You would think.
I think it'd be up to the board. Would you want that? Or would you?
We should be so lucky that somebody wants to have a hotel over by you.
Yeah,
That's absolutely
As long as you have a patio view,
Yeah.
it could still be an indoor hall with a patio to it.
We're all good with that?
okay.
Make that change, please, Mr. Meadows.
You got it.
Looks good.
Okay, I have one other. Anybody else? I have one other question. How do, or do they even fit into this, and that's bed and breakfast? They are addressed in the
We have other language in the SUP language. So currently, let me pull that up real quick. Currently, bed and breakfast as well as vacation rentals are by specific use permit, and they are separate from hotels and motels. And they have their own set of rules that were passed a couple years ago. So, yeah.
All right, any further discussion on this issue? Are we all in agreement? We're good? You have your direction, Zach?
Yes, sir.
Will
And
the plan be to redo this and resubmit it, or send it on the cop?
No, so we have to make a formal posting because it is changing the zoning ordinance, so that will be brought to the April meeting in front of y'all, and with all those changes, so you'll see it one last time, and then we'll take it to council after that.
Okay.
Thanks for your work and effort on this, Zach.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate it.
That's what we're here for.
the job description.
But it's nothing like getting a pat on the back.
I appreciate that. I don't get them all.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a topic I want to bring up,
Okay,
and that is the Taylor building down here on Highway 3.
yes.
We approved that property and gave them the go-ahead with the site plan based on the fact that we would see a front elevation that would resemble
Yes.
the Highway 3 overlay look and not a warehouse. I drove by there today and it looks just like a warehouse.
Yes. He
Did you
brought.
get a final, did you get a final
So
plan?
he brought, I was out Friday and Monday. He brought materials by to show me, and we'll be putting that probably on the April agenda for y'all. But he brought materials and type that would to see if that would be applicable to the overlay district and produce a plan for that. I haven't been able to talk to him because, again, this is my first day back. I had some personal.
Well, there's metal siding up there now on a regular front door.
Yeah, so I mean, but yes, I mean, he is working on what that facade looks like. Like I said, he dropped stuff off to me on Friday, or it could have been, I guess, yesterday. But he is working on it. So you will more than likely you will see it on in the April meeting. So
This is a good time for me to ask kind of a more broad question. At what point we approve things a certain way in how they look and site maps and everything else?
yes,
And there have been called to my attention several times recently that things are much different than where we originally approved.
okay.
So at what point do people have to come back if there's a substantial difference in what was projected, what was approved,
Yes,
what is happening?
the language says a change of more than 50%, either to the appraised value or if it's completely different in building materials, which I haven't seen one unless you have one offhand, then that would be something that I would make sure that is brought back before y'all as well.
So are you talking about something that is new and approved and then?
Well, I'm actually,
different?
I'm just broad sweeping it, but there's a couple things in my.
Well, if we,
Yeah, but,
I mean,
for instance, subdivisions that are going up.
subdivisions don't go to y'all though,
Well,
other than the plat.
Other than the plat.
well, okay, but we approve a plat, and then the plat changes.
Yes, and it will be brought back before you.
No,
Yes.
that's, well, okay, that hasn't happened.
I know specifically which one you're talking about.
No, there's two,
Okay,
so, that hasn't happened twice.
okay.
So,
Well,
and by the
I know
time
about
it
the
comes
first
or-
one, and I'll be happy, I mean, we can discuss afterwards on the other one, but the one
But
for sure that I know about will be coming back before you.
Okay, but it's something I think maybe all of us have questions about, I
Okay.
would think, because the issue is that, and it's not, I'm not just saying that specific, I just happen to know a couple.
Yep.
That by the time it gets back, they're so far down the road, you can't tear up homes, you can't, you know, I know, I know that the amount of things that were supposed to be in cul-de-sacs at a small 40-foot lot
Okay?
aren't in cul-de-sacs, I know
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And these are things that I think that we would, if we knew all of this, we would be very upset at. So
Yeah, so the state, well, just to clarify, there are certain things that, once a plat is approved, that are allowed to be amended, and the state of Texas says can be approved at a administrative level. But there are certain things that if they do change on the plat, you do have to see. And at this point, there is one subdivision that has made significant changes, and you will see again, but the other subdivisions have not made that threshold.
okay, I guess the question was what
Yeah.
is the threshold?
Yeah, and there's specific language in the local government
Okay.
code that
That's
clarifies
fine.
that, so.
It makes it kind of.
I understand, and we can talk offline. I'll be more than happy to kind of walk down that path with you.
Okay, next item on our agenda, discussion and direction concerning possible updates and changes to the City of Dickinson's future land use map.
Yes, so Chairman and Commission members, so as I kind of put in the agenda item, which is why I'm sure Councilman Dietz is here, as his name showed up, that at the last council meeting, specifically Councilman Dietz expressed looking at making changes to the future land use map, especially looking at specifically along the bayou. It's always kind of been something that it's a feature that obviously Dickinson loves and needs to protect, but also kind of harness and be able to create development along that that really makes sense for Dickinson. So would be my guess is why he's mentioned this and bringing this up. So it's just to start that conversation. I know we had last time where we had a couple things that were kind of hot ticket button issues that we wanted to focus on, but because this was specifically mentioned by the council, it's something I wanted to get proactive on and at least start the conversation with you. And I'm assuming, you know, that we'll probably even take that even further and, you know, maybe even have some work sessions or something with council involved in that. But we really, you know, want the public involved in that discussion as well and making sure they understand, you know, because it's their community, and making sure that we're all on the same page on what we're wanting to see along the bayou. So this is that first step. I did print some bigger maps. I don't really know how to kind of go through it and how much discussion you want to have tonight, but I at least wanted to bring to your attention that this is something that we I do want this board, as the planning and zoning board, specifically the planning side of things, to really kind of start thinking about and looking, because it is something that, you know, council is interested in doing. And I'll leave it at that. If Councilman Dietz wants to kind of add to that discussion, I do. So.
Please share your thoughts with me.
Yeah, I don't want you to guess. And I'm glad you brought up the focus on planning, because that's an important part of this.
You right up to that microphone so we can hear you.
That's an important part of this board, is the planning part. I'm going to go back. First of all, I brought this up under council comments. So that was the first time the rest of the council heard it. But I'm glad that Zach went ahead and put it on your agenda. I'm going to go back before the storm and start talking about some development. We had at least 3 developers that were interested in the freeway property out there to develop that, and I think they still are. But there was all kinds of ideas being kicked around there, and I want some of that to be revived. What I'm looking for, and I'm hoping I can get the buy-in from council, is going to require council, this board, the EDC, and the Chamber of Commerce, and of course the public, everybody, to come up with a Destination Dickinson, Vision Dickinson, 2025, whatever, however long we decide. But the only way that we're going to attract new business, more sales tax, take some of the burden off of the property tax, and to, you know, generate the income that we can take care of our infrastructure is if we start looking at some things and have a plan. One of the things that I found out from the first thing one of the developers asked about the freeway property on the bio was, do you have a master plan for it? Well, no, we don't. So EDC did pay to go out and have some plans drawn up for, you know, what could possibly go in there. But there's other places that are already commercial on the bio. There are places that it makes sense for them to be commercial. Possibly the fork, you know, across from the boat ramp, that property there. I don't know what the trailer park's zone right now. Possibly the Dean's property. All of that has the property right across the street from Murray's. I think it's commonly referred to as the Peacock Farm. But there's a lot of property like that that could be a potential for development. One of the challenges is what will the citizens of Dickinson support? We run into a lot of situations, like for instance 10 acres just west of Casa Grande, and somebody came in there and wanted to put in a event center, and it's on the bio, and there was, you know, 50 people in here against it. So it's, you know, it's very important that we get public input up front. I mean, the idea is to come up with a plan or a vision for Dickinson on the bio that the public can support. We get some of this work done ahead of time, and then it's not a matter of a developer coming in and saying, well, I'm interested in this, and then Zach has to tell them, well, right now that's zone residential, even though it's a vacant lot. But, we can go through the process of going through planning and zoning, going through council and all of that. And I think some of that can be headed off if we as a community can agree ahead of time on some of this. There's been talk about a water taxi. Would there be enough development on there to support that? Where you could have dinner cruises down the bayou, catered by some of the local restaurants. There's no place to buy fuel. One of the things that all the people that live on the bayou, they have to either tote it to their house, even though their boat's hanging out over the water. They have to tote it or put their boat on a trailer and haul, go down to the gas station. Those kind of things. We have the market that is coming. That's a good anchor. So, we've got from the freeway, to the market. I think we can leverage possibilities with people looking at what Murray's has done, because Murray's is a regional draw. There's people from all over, Clear Lake, League City, Gal. We even got the Galveston City Council up here for mayor council meeting, and they don't ever come to those things, but they came to Murray's. So I think people can see that there is an opportunity, for a regional draw. That's why I have high hopes for the market, because it will be a regional draw. But there's other things that we can do to really make this community a destination. I was told when I first got on council that Dickinson will never be a destination, but it can be. I firmly believe that. And I think some of the things that I see on social media now, some of the younger people are looking for those type of amenities, as well as a sports complex and those kind of things that are also in our comprehensive plan. So just from my standpoint, I'd like to focus on the bio first on the comprehensive plan, take a look at what we've got there, what the potential is, but we really need to get EDC and the chamber involved too. They're a vital part of any development we come up with. You guys are the first,
I would agree
of making the pitch. So.
Yes, I would agree with pretty much everything you said, except that you've been here your whole life just like me. It's going to be awfully hard to get a consensus of people along the bio that are going to say anything other than, you're not putting that next to my bio.
I understand. And that may be the answer. That may be what comes out of this, but I'm here to tell you, if we do nothing, then nothing will happen.
That's true.
And, we have to give it a shot. And
we're going to have to take a hard shot.
Maybe I'm being naive, but...
I guess my question is, how much land is available along the bayou?
Well, that's what we want to find out.
Well,
That's why we want to look.
there's actually a lot, but
There
you
is.
have to pinpoint which is which. But, at some point, if that's ever going to happen, at some point, this body, council, everybody else is going to have to take a hard stand and say, this is what's going to be allowed.
Well, what's got to happen is that the people that want it to happen need to show up at some of these town hall meetings that we'll have, instead of just the people that, I call them citizens against virtually everything, which is, the acronym is CAVE.
Question for you.
Well, I've always called that old line Dickinson.
Well, people want their streets fixed. People want, especially after the storm, we took a hit. I don't care what FEMA says. That storm damaged our streets. They want their street fixed. They want parks. They want a place for their kids to participate in sports. They want drainage. They want all of this. And we have a 19-point almost $20 million budget, period. And 25% of that goes to the police department. So we have to generate some business, some sales tax type business, not just ad valorem taxes.
Along with that, what types of things do bring the most sales? Because some of the things you have said don't, but
Right.
what are the things that do bring sales?
Well, the entertainment, industry right now is sales tax. Some retail, I mean, I don't know if there's tax on kayak rentals and boat rentals and that type of thing.
No, I'm talking like the most. I mean,
Oh, the most?
for most banks, but.
I'm sorry, but,
Well, under the management district, we can have procurement done in Dickinson for like a major builder. And they buy everything through my office here in Dickinson and we get the sales tax. So I would say probably since McCree Ford moved their cash register for all their service and parts into Dickinson, on the old building, it was actually in the county. And so that's generating quite a bit.
It's going to be primarily restaurants, that alcohol sales, those kind of things is where you're going to get the most change.
Okay, well, that's the answer then.
Yeah,
Is-
and,
I mean,
and
'cause
any of those entertainment type,
Right.
certain ones under that is really where you're going to get that most.
And see that, as a citizen here, I want all those other things to happen, like my roads fixed, the other things. And so I'm looking for the most bang for my buck. I want the most sales tax revenue coming in. So if we're going to develop, that's going to be foremost in my mind.
There's also that thin line also about services available in the city. When I say services, I don't know, bring this up, a car wash. I know a lot of people weren't fond of it. It didn't bring in hardly anything in the way of revenue, but it was a service that we didn't have any other quality places like that. I.e., we have restaurants, but bringing in a quality restaurant keeps people in town more often.
Because the small restaurants, smaller local ones are great, but they're not going to bring in like Moray's, the quality, and they're going to bring a lot more in. And that's just naturally because of the atmosphere and the things that they bring to the table compared to.
It's interesting you would say that, because I've written to the owners of Little Mexico twice.
Mm-hmm.
They were packed all the time,
Yeah.
and not a response.
Marjorie can fill you in.
I'm buying it. Are you really buying it?
All right.
But we need support.
Yeah.
We need
But
support. They're not gonna open it.
I learned a long time ago in
Good for you.
the fast food industry that, I asked the question, well, aren't you concerned that, you built this Pizza Hut and now Arby's is opening up next to you or Burger King? And, of course, the answer is no, we're not. We want it to be a center for people to come, and they're going to get here and they say, well, why don't we do this one instead of this one, like that type of thing. But it's a draw. And I just think that even though, what's gone on before and the old Dickinson and all that, I said, we have to come out of that. We have to get some of these younger people involved and their wants and concerns addressed and out there on the table too.
If I can, to Greg's point, what land is available and those kind of things, the future land use map and what that process looks like is to, it's not a matter of what is available, it's what we think that this community will look like 20, 25 years down the road. This is what we want it to. It may take even longer to get there, 5, whatever it is, but it's gonna. You have to build that in, and then start making, when the developers come, then the other ones that aren't that way, that aren't available, could change. But you have to build it in first, because otherwise they're not going to.
But Zach, the study that Texas A&M did for us, it delineates the amount of open space right now.
So it does have some of that in there, yes.
It has a lot. They did a lot of work.
Yeah, it does have some of that in there. The future land use map, to be honest, needs a lot of work. I'll just be honest with y'all. But a lot of I know obviously Councilman Dietz wants to focus on the bayou, and that's a great start. But there are other areas in the future land use map that we do need to adjust. And it did have some of those stats and things in there. And that's a great place to kind of understand where we're at in a baseline. But we do need to understand also where the community as a whole wants to go and build that in, because there really wasn't, to be honest, any of that in the comprehensive plan process.
No, but the question was, how much available land? They did.
And we do have some of those. Yes. Yes.
If I can address that.
Where does that process start? Does it start here? It hasn't in the past.
Well, that's why I emphasize the planning part.
Yes. Thank you.
When you look at the map, the use map right now, the southeast quadrant of the city is the most open, is the most bayou exposure that we have. And there's a big piece of property there that give all kinds of opportunity, but there's no ingress and egress out of there. There's no streets.
Well, and that could be part of a development. The thing about it is we have no vision to tell the developer, this is what we envision happening on this property. It's like I said, it's not just vacant land. It's, you know, the Cardoffer property, there's a house on it. I'm sure it's residential, right? Sure. There's nothing around it. It would be, you know, prime to designate it. You know, there may be places like that. There may be people that actually live on the bayou that would want theirs rezoned. We don't know. And so I'm not looking at just vacant land.
Yeah, we did have one individual make that attempt.
Well, yeah.
That didn't go over well.
Yeah, the wedding event center that started building without permit.
Well, there's that, but we also had everybody's favorite term, a high-end RV park.
Yeah, that was on the other side.
Yeah, it didn't get approved.
Off of Hughes Road.
So, if we can come up with this vision, I think things like that could be avoided.
That's a very good point.
You know, is because you know, if a developer comes in and says, I want to do this, well, that's not in our vision. That's not compatible with destination.
So if you had to come up with a plan today, I mean, what would be the property you would want in this plan? The one that, the ideal plan?
I would want every, well, if we're going to focus on the bayou, everything from Cemetery Road all the way to our city limits on the far east end. Consider everything. I mean, we have the second, is it the second phase of Bayou Lakes going in? Fourth phase. And none of the property.
How many miles of we talking about? Cemetery Road to, that's a long way.
Did I understand you correctly? You're talking about the entire bayou?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, Dickinson
The
bayou.
designated commercial.
No.
He's saying let's focus on
saying-
yeah.
We need to review and recommend changes
Along
to the comprehensive plan with focus on Dickinson bayou to start with. Like Zach said, the whole comprehensive land use plan needs to be looked at, but we need to come up in conjunction with planning and possibly zoning changes, chamber, EDC, and council with input from the public on what do we see as a vision for Dickinson 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
You know, I think this is a really good time to do this because we did put the comprehensive plan together and we've worked with that. We've had the overlay district, we've worked with that, and we're now growing to the point, and people around us like League City and Texas City and Lamarck and all those people are, you know, And we're now at a point where that makes a lot of sense.
I think so. I think if we don't, we're gonna get willy-nilly development.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be painful for everybody concerned, because they're gonna come to Zach and he's gonna say, well, that requires a specific use permit, and you're gonna have to.
And a zoning change,
And a zoning change, yeah.
But could we take the present, future land use map
Yes.
and sort of block in the areas along the bayou and be cognizant of all those pieces of property that are vacant or available,
Yeah.
that we are
So what
very
I-
careful about what we do?
Yeah, so what I can do, and what I can do is I can look at, I can get snapshots of those areas, dive in specifically along the bayou there.
Identify them.
Exactly, identify the properties, what is vacant, what isn't, is not, and then, bring that to whatever this morphs into with the other boards, so we can start having that. But I think there has to be, a lot of times what happens in these type of workshop meetings is everybody walks into it blindly. There's gonna have to be some time ahead of time that able to come and bring ideas, because I don't want to just sit around a table, and I don't think anybody wants to, and say,
How about this?
what are we doing, and so there needs to be some sort of kind of input prior, staff can consolidate that and bring those to everybody that's involved, so.
We're talking about, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we're talking about a pretty massive undertaking here.
Sure.
Right. And you're absolutely right. Now's the time. Get done, or get started.
Yeah.
One thing I don't think I was starting to touch on with the developments, the bio lakes. But that might be something that we want to include in our development vision, is, would it make sense for them to have some commercial designated on the bayou, whether it be a public pier or whatever, that we've, totally overlooked. And I think there's still some land available between there and Cemetery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they're, even in this development, they're not all the way up to the bayou, so there's still room there.
Yeah, so it's looking at the future and talking to these guys when they come sit at the table and say, hey, our vision is this.
Yeah. And I will say, sorry, go ahead, Al.
Okay, so before we get too much further, I think it's an easy mistake to make. I think the board, it's easy to conflate a future land use map with what are the opportunities today.
Yeah.
But that's really not what this is. This is what, like Zach says, more of a long-term planning document where if you envision that you prefer to have a certain region, because I think, just words in Zach's mouth, I think the reason why the future land use map needs to be so carefully studied is it's more a reflection of what's on the ground today, with some very minor revisions of what we think might be achievable, as opposed to a vision of what we'd like the city to look like.
Right.
So if you make the future land use map exactly how if you could draw Dickinson from scratch, exactly how you'd like it to look, that way when the developer comes in and says, hey Zach, I'd like to put a business here, it's kind of difficult if that doesn't match the land use map, or absolutely. Because if currently you have a nice piece of property on the bayou that this board would like to have as a commercial property, but you don't take the action to zone it as such because this building just been built, when that building gets demolished 50 years from now, 20 years from now, or blows down a storm next year, they can immediately put the house back there. As opposed to Zach saying, hey, slow down, that's a commercial piece of property. You now have to make it conform with this vision, and that way over time, just through the natural progression of buildings being replaced and being maintained, the vision is achieved.
It's another overlay district.
In a way, but basically you're facilitating the type of development you want while discouraging, not preventing, but discouraging the ones you don't want, so that you can actually make it into what. So I think it's easy to look at this and say, ooh, we could change this parcel. I think it's more high level than that. And Zach and I, and Zach's whole department are at your disposal to make that happen. It's a big undertaking, but
yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the overlay district. I mean, one of the problems I have, big problems I have with the overlay district is that we adopted the regulations, didn't change the underlying zoning, so you have all these residential properties in the overlay district where it doesn't apply. We can all argue all day long about what should be and shouldn't be in the overlay district, but if you didn't make that proactive change, it's not doing any good. It's not servicing anybody. money. So these are the things we need to make that pitch. What works? What do we want to see? And then put it in place and make the changes proactively before that development wants to come and kind of head those things off.
So we sit here all agree, and you ask the question, where does it start? Okay. What role do you want us to start at, or where are you going to start?
Yeah, so I don't fully know, to be honest. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you.
Is there any point you could present to P&Z board? We have our future land use map. Probably a good place to start would be to do an overlay of the existing zoning. And then it's exactly you said, identifying which lots are not in compliance with what our future land map is. Which ones are available that the board could start reviewing immediately. Going, okay, we have 20 parcels that we would like to convert these from. Nobody lives on these. They have been residential forever. There's no residential. We'd like to go ahead and convert those to commercial. And then that would be a good course of action to begin. And this will be an ongoing task that will take a while to achieve.
Sure.
Anybody agree with that concept?
Yes.
You in the front row?
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'll start somewhere.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. We gotta, if indeed we're gonna start this process, then we are gonna have to start with you bringing us just what you said. Section details, I guess we could say, and then discuss each one of those properties individually, almost one by one.
And I think there does need to be, so we can start at this level and that's fine, but I think, there needs to be coordination with, because I also don't want to put, 100% effort behind that and council or even EDC say, that's never going to fly.
Well, that's a real concern.
Well, that's a real possibility.
Well, they all need, everybody, they all need to be involved. And one of the key things in the vision is what amenities do we want on the bio? Could be like Kima, all restaurants. It could be, well, we already have a arcade and go-kart track on the bio. What could be done to make that a destination from the bio?
Well, Lake City tried that, and they wanted to have like river walk is in San Antonio. They wanted that along the water.
Advocate for that.
Never happened.
And just because it failed in Lake City is not going to stop you trying to do it.
Zach, what was said is, I think, pretty important, is a way to start. And the way to start is to identify those places that seem to be available. And then, instead of us working independently, like you had indicated, let's all get together and have our homework ahead of time so that we can be productive for staff.
Well, indeed, council, EDC, all of that needs to be part of, has to be part of this big picture. But I think initially, we put all of those groups together in one room, that's going to be counterproductive.
Yes.
Well, start with exactly what we're talking about.
What I'd like to see happen is maybe, where you already have a representative from council, or maybe two, and then the president of the chamber, the director at EDC, to come meet with you guys and make an offer of what they can bring to the table when we start talking about amenities, what we want it to look like, that kind of thing. That could help guide, the land use is the backbone. So, but I think the amenities we're looking for, what we're shooting for 5, 10 years from now, what do we really want? Do we want like 10 restaurants, a place to buy gas, a water taxi with river cruises? Do we want river cruises without it really being a water taxi? Do we want kayak rental, boat rental? What do we want?
So would it make sense if you figured out how to get this thing going and putting some actual funding into it to get some consultants involved? Would that make sense?
Spent a lot of money on the market. We can spend some money on this.
Well, we've done that with the development of the existing future land use
Right.
We've done that with the comprehensive plan.
I think there's some value in initially keeping it internally.
Thank you.
I mean, let's see how far we can get down the road with it. I mean, you know, I mean, there are staff in place, and yes, we're very busy, but there are staff in place that can produce quite a bit. And so I have confidence that we can tackle quite a bit and bring a lot. And you know, I mean, we're supposed to be the experts in the field, or you know, and know what's kind of coming and things like that. And I think let's start there. Let's try to, you know, and then you know, if we hit a brick wall, then at that point, I think, you know, as a community, say maybe we need to take this further. But
I mean, I don't disagree, but yeah. I would encourage us to say, hey, we could use or benefit from some of that outside expertise.
Sure.
So then, at what point then, once we have the various things, is that where we have public town meetings and that's because certainly we want the public to help guide.
Yeah, and I think even through the process, I mean, we need to make it known that these are things we're discussing and making sure that we really would value people's opinion. I mean, the discussion that we have here, you know, I would love to have people come up and talk about it. I mean, even just now, you know, so I mean, that's...
Do you hear that Facebook?
So we definitely need to have that initially stated and known. So
if it becomes even semi-general knowledge, they will come.
Yeah, they will. They will.
I have no doubt about
Well, that, you know, honestly, brainstorming is kind of a cool, maybe first step. I mean, you've got to know what you've got, and you just can't.
Okay, so burn this down for us. What are you going to do now?
I'm gonna start. Go ahead.
Okay, you know, I've noticed all of the growth in this area, especially in the League City area. Okay, and I noticed they always start with an anchor. Okay, whether it's a Kroger, a Walmart, an HEB. Okay, so we've started this project called with the marketplace. We want to look like Pikes Peak or Pikes Place in Seattle. So apparently that has gotten off the ground, right? Has it?
Yeah, I mean, it's yes, it is.
And someone mentioned something about anchoring off of that place. To me, that would be a good start.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the market, basically.
Exactly. It's pretty much there, yeah.
The
plans extend down to the bayou.
The plans take it to the bayou and development along the bayou incorporated into it is a really cool deal.
And I think that's why there's value in bringing EDC representative in and bringing, you know, the chamber, because they're involved in those discussions. And I know even some of y'all are, you know, even have been involved in some of those discussions. So,
and then you're having a public meeting on the 27th.
Correct.
Yes.
So, good start.
Yes. So I kind of have my direction. I think, you know, moving forward, inviting those players to our next meeting and start carving away. Let's start down here. Let's start, you know, in this general area around, you know, kind of the central Dickinson area, and kind of carve that out and start those initial discussions. Look at what's available. You know, and I'll make those kind of overlay the existing stuff too, and you know, everything that's kind of been discussed this evening. And bring that at the April meeting. That agenda, if is going to be a little full. I already have some additional things that will be on there. So if you would want me to push it, I can. But
for that purpose, couldn't we have a special meeting?
Yeah, we could.
That doesn't have to be.
Because we don't have a meeting every.
No, it can be a special meeting.
Is anybody opposed to having a meeting?
Oh, I think it's great.
For a purpose specifically like this? I mean, I think it'd probably be more productive for us to do this.
Yeah, that's fine. We can definitely set that up.
So another comment I want to make is that the part of this is educating the community, right? And I think that's a huge undertaking in itself. How do we actually go about doing that differently than what we've tried to do in the past?
Well, I mean, we have, you know, at the time when we did the comp plan, which obviously we wanted that public input and didn't really receive it. We didn't use, I would say, the methods of social media and other things that we had at that time in place. You know, we need to use that appropriately for those things. I think right now we have more than ever, probably a good capture of people very interested in things right now, which is good, and we need to capitalize on that. You know, even producing, you know, kind of doing that offhand kind of special meeting and kind of creating it like a forum in a way, or something to that extent, to kind of bring people in and make that, that their input is wanted and needed in this process. So I think we have a lot of tools in place, we just didn't use them as properly as we probably could have in the past. So let's start with that and see what we get, and then try to brainstorm further if it doesn't get the results we're looking for.
Very well.
Okay.
All right. Everybody happy?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. We appreciate also.
One more item on our agenda, which is adjournment, but before we get to that, since this is a public forum and I have a public position here, I want to make a comment. And you know where I'm going.
I don't know.
With regards to the horrendous atrocity that's taking place on Highway 646.
Which one?
Oh.
Which one, please?
This favorite.
Anybody agree with me?
All I can say is I feel you.
Explain, please.
All the trees.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right down the tree.
I know there's nothing we can do about it. I know it's compliant and all that kind of stuff. I just want to go on record as having said that, as far as I'm concerned, it's beyond horrendous atrocity. I know that it costs money for the property owner to do that. The amount of money that it cost was piggy bank change as far as I'm concerned. And we should never, ever allow this to happen again somehow or another. Now, I know that makes me sound anti-development and all those things, which I really am not. But there's a compromise in there somewhere, and it needs to be found. I know our hands are tied with the state law and all those things, but it needs to be found. We have, that is a wound that Dickinson will never recover from, as far as I'm concerned. We might as well head down Pine Drive and start cutting trees.
I agree with you. There were some beautiful trees cut down.
Now, yeah, you know, small trees and all that kind of stuff.
There was some beautiful.
It's just an average piece of property, but no tree on that place is an average tree.
Can you explain to everybody what that development is?
It's just a retail development as far as that I know, just a strip center.
Be a strip center type
As long as
thing,
it's
right?
not another state of Texas detention pond.
It's not. As far as the information we have received thus far is just another retail center. The current owner of the property also owns that Chevron center, so I would imagine he's just kind of wanting to replicate something similar, you know, across. But
I know you're talking.
Chairman, with all due respect, it truly is, I've seen it, it is horrific looking, but it kind of dovetails into what Councilman Dietz was talking about as far as making use of our commercial property.
I get it.
It's tough.
I get it.
And if you built a house on the back of general commercial property, your words, you're planting beautiful trees on potential general commercial property.
No argument.
So,
I seen it, I was kind of shocked.
I'm sorry, Councilman Anderson. You said the building is horrendous or the cutting down the trees?
The cutting of the trees
Okay,
was
okay.
kind of traumatizing.
Yes,
I guess I would temper that a little bit with clear cutting prior to any plan
Yeah,
for development.
yeah,
I would agree.
yeah,
I
exactly.
would say that.
So Chairman, you felt as though that some of the trees should have been saved?
Absolutely.
Okay, I agree with you. Just wanted to,
Well,
where you were coming from.
His point is that they're cutting the trees down in hopes of being able to build something that hasn't been approved to be built.
Oh, that.
Well, it may or may not have been specifically planned yet. Now, if a development is planned for, and not just that specific piece of property, but that one, since it's the one in question, for any piece of property, there should be an effort made to incorporate that development or incorporate the trees into that development. And somehow say, and I know that's extremely difficult to do, all that stuff.
And we actually used to have an ordinance.
Yeah, but the state
But we actually backpedaled on that ordinance because, and forget, what was the size? Was it 24 inches in diameter?
20 is 20 and
20?
20
20 and above used to have to go before council. In the course of 1 year, we had about 25 agenda items so the council could address cutting the trees for people that were building homes. So that we came to the realization, is this really the best use of our time when we have a fully capable person and departments should be able to manage that? Not throwing you under the bus, Zach, but I mean, it's something above a certain size that is supposed to be addressed.
But now they can't.
Now, were any of those trees over 20 inches?
Oh.
You still can't do that, can you? Is that?
20 inches. So some of them were pretty tall. I don't know if they were 20 inches.
If there were 20 inch ones, there were few.
Yeah, they were very,
But
very
the
little.
point is that exactly as our ordinances are not written, for that matter, there's no protections for trees under 20 inches.
We
We
had,
don't have any controls to stop or prevent that.
they had a tree survey done, I don't know, I couldn't tell you since there was so many trees. All the numbers started running together at some point, but, the state said that anything under 10 can be cut, no permit, no problem. They were all over 10 trees, and ranging up from there. But again, because of what was done previously, I don't think any of them reached 20 but regardless, even if they would have, it still would have been placed on our approval at that point and not any additional approval because of the change that was made.
And how is the cost determination? What determines?
So there's the fee schedule, which probably needs to be looked at if you're interested in looking at, how much we're charging, but there's a fee schedule that was produced based on the size of the tree and the acreage that would be, cut. So those are the two factors that are played into it, and it's per tree based on the size. And so the cost of this one, and I don't want to get too much more into it just because it's not an agenda item, but was $16,000 is what they paid to cut the trees. So that's how much was paid to the city. So.
They cut all of them down on their property.
I agree.
I knew it was coming at some point.
Yeah, because they won't walk.
Forgive me, when you said 646, I thought you were talking about the overpass on our Georgia track.
Oh, my God.
I know you're on 646.
No, I didn't know exactly
I think they were here. You were here before.
Well, no, it's Saturday, put something.
It's a 15-20-minute operation, it's 45 from me.
They're actually,
I tried to let Councilman Beats in as I was coming through, it was too slow, so I had to cut it off.
We adjourn.
All right. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I did.
We did.
Somebody.
Motion by Mr. Porter, second by Mr. Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
You did yours.
Yeah, I have
Sure.
Now I'm about trees.
Right? They got a whole bunch of.
Don't leave me alone.
Oh, no.
question for you. What kind of a regular
Daycare, and I've heard that church service that we're trying. It was the same. Yeah, they painted extra.
No, they're everything.
I saw the paint today.